IVM.
Maya wanted a job, but Maya had a husband. So Maya was told you cannot work till you get your husband's permission. What? Asking your husband if you can work? Welcome to the show, The Longest Constitution. I'm your host, Priya Mirza, and I'm a lecturer at Syracuse and Delhi College. And I'm really excited about today's episode because while researching for this one, I found out that where I teach has had an important place in the history of the rights of the disabled. But more on that in a bit. We are unpacking disability and still looking at accessing work. Why getting to the workplace is so hard? Because all the jobs which pay have already been taken, and those who have them don't want to share. In the first episode, we saw how the Cine Costume Makeup Artists and Hairdressers Association said that no women would be members. And although these guys were not employers themselves, they were denying access to work by these unconstitutional conditions. But in their defense, the men said they denied women because if the female members are given membership, then it will become impossible for the male members to get work. That was their concern. Not merit, not efficiency, chalo. At least these guys were honest. But others aren't. And all kinds of things, ability, competence, efficiency, equality, merit, health are used to obstruct access to employment. Our bodies are used against us to deny us. That's what Maya Devi of Maharashtra discovered. She studied, married, had a child, but she wanted more. And when a training course to be a nurse came up, she applied. Except that the form said married women must include the written consent of the husband along with their application. Consent of a husband. And don't get me started on marital rape where a woman's consent is not even considered. But for a job, you need the husband's consent. Now Maya's husband graciously, generously, wonderfully gave his precious consent, but then he changed his mind. But Maya said, sorry darling, nothing doing. If you can't change your husband, change the rules and then the world. And let's just pause and consider what these ideas are built on. In this case at least, the home is where the woman should be. And she should ask her husband about stuff she wants to do. And that work has less to do with the ability to actually do it, but imagined inabilities. So a man, yeah, able-bodied, efficient, yeah. But woman, pregnancy, maternity, and marital status can actually go against her. But at least the state recognizes that women are a different class of citizens under Article 15, Part 3. But what? What about those who are truly invisible? So our constitution registers the historically oppressed, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, backward castes, our weaker sections. But what about the disabled, the differently abled, whose characters are shaped more through mythology than reality? The blind, the deaf, the physically incapacitated, the mute. Capable, able, competent, but invisible. Because they aren't even recognized by the constitution. Plus, culturally, if you're disabled, you have to be evil. So, Manthara in Ramayana is a hunchback and plain conniving. And a quick survey of literature and movies tells you that the disabled are never ever seen just as regular as everybody else. And that's not just in our culture, by the way. The celebrated Greeks, they used to throw ill-formed babies out to die rather than having a disabled person amidst their pursuit of truth and beauty. So beauty is linked to goodness and ugliness to badness. Now the word disability occurs in the Constitution as a social impairment, for example, Article 17. But the single constitutional provision that speaks explicitly of disability is Article 41, which addresses the state's commitment to providing public assistance in cases of, hear this out, unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement, and other cases of undeserved want. All negatives. And by the way, Article 41 is not a right, it's a directive principle of state policy, just general ambitions of the state. And the second constitutional reference to abilities under Article 326, which talks about the right to vote, which can be denied if you are unsound of mind. That's it. Two articles which talks about the huge differences we have as individuals and citizens. And by the way, nowhere is unsoundness of mind actually described or discussed. And that's where my college steps in. Ta-da! But hold on, there's a bit of a journey before that. So in 1970, the Federation of the Blind was set up, and the history of the rights of the disabled starts with the history of the organized blind. And have a look at the links below to find out more. And it was in Zakrutzen College in 1974 that the National Students Organization of the Blind was formed, and these guys began to put pressure on Delhi University to accommodate the blind, and DU led the way. In 1994, Delhi University reserved 3% of the college teaching positions for the visually challenged. Wow, major victory. But still, the university was just one small space and just one university. There was still no law, just a memorandum. Since 1977, there was a memorandum to secure jobs for Class C and D jobs. But what about the fight over the great UPSC, the IS jobs? Should the great hallmark of Indian ambition, the UPSC, accommodate the visually challenged? Under Article 32 of the Constitution, a writ petition was filed and heard by the Supreme Court in 1993 that the UPSC recognized the visually challenged. And the assumption that the disabled are deficient are demonstrated in the court's observations. Hear this out. Mr. Rangta, himself visually challenged, has argued his case with utmost clarity. Mr. Rangta was fully conversant with all the relevant annexes to the petition. He referred to the relevant pages in the bulky book with perfect ease. We did not feel even for a moment that the case was being argued by a visually handicapped lawyer. Mr. Rangta's performance before us ably proves the point that the visually challenged can perform jobs entrusted to them with equal efficiency. And that's how the disabled are projected. Their efficiency forever questioned, their ability always doubted, their normality and functionality a matter of surprise. By the way, the 2011 census estimated that the number of people with disabilities in India is close to 2.68 crore. That's 2.2% of the population. So in National Federation of Blind versus UPSC 1993, the Supreme Court said that the UPSC must permit visually impaired persons to take the exam with the help of a scribe or in braille. Yeah. So affirmative action ought to expand and has expanded in India to reflect the diversity in society. The PWD Act 1995 was India's first act which recognized the rights of the disabled with just 7 disabilities, but as equal citizens to participate, access work for the first time. And the whole point is that this was read into the Constitution. Broad, luminous vision flowing from Article 14 and 21. And it didn't happen magically, by the way. It took strikes, picketing, dharnas to demand a law which, apart from providing 3% reservations for people with disability, led to spaces being more accessible to the differently able, like buses and airports. But it also produced a medicalized vision of disability, which set the peg of disability at 40%. But is disability measurable? And what happened to Maya? In Maya Devi versus State of Maharashtra 1985, the court said that the husband's consent has nothing to do with Maya's training. And even though women are a different class from men, this restriction is unconstitutional and struck down that rule. So today's takeaway is that abilities and disabilities are frequently imagined and imposed. We are what we are. Sometimes a choice, sometimes not. And it is for the state to accommodate us. Did you like the show? Share it with your friends. Yeah, go ahead. Until next time, this is me, Priya Mirza, signing out.
Hey everybody, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talks to holistic health coach Chris Gibson about the various aspects of skincare routines. On The Longest Constitution, Priya deconstructs an important judgment on reservations with the Indira Sawhney case. On Ikka Dukka Economy, Abhinav and Dr. Bharat Junjunwala analyze how the dynamics of a typical government job have changed over the years. And on The Life Manifesto, Zarina teaches us how we can become better decision makers. Do follow us on social media. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, please do tell a friend. We really do appreciate the word of mouth. Also, don't forget to rate us on any of the platforms that you're listening to us on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever it is. And we are also on YouTube. On YouTube, you can check out our various channels on ivmpodcast.com/YouTube. And finally, we'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Bank of Baroda and CoinSwitch Kuber. Thank you for making this possible.
Are you looking for finance products and services that can enhance your personal finance experience? Are you looking for a space to talk about your financial product or service? And are you looking for a crisp talk show where the conversation is all about money? Well, your search ends here. Hi, my name is Anupam Gupta and I'm host of the Paisa Vaisa podcast, and I invite you for the conversation about your personal finance on each Monday on the IVM Podcast app or the website or on any podcast streaming platforms. See you folks.